Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Radio FWD podcast, TIFF 2025 Wrap-Up Edition. I'm very excited to bring on our resident music coordinator at Radio FWD, Zachary Osborn. Thanks so much for being here, Zach.
Hello.
And I'm also very excited to bring on Range Magazine contributor Prabhjot Bains, who I met first TIFF 2023. It feels only appropriate that I bring you back on for a TIFF recap video. So thanks again for being here, Prab.
Yeah, super excited. It was a fun TIFF. A lot of conversations, a lot of opposing opinions. I'm excited to get into that again.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, we just chatted a little bit before we started recording, but the opposing opinions will definitely come into play in the next hour or so that we're chatting about the festival. But I would love to hear just a little bit about, starting with you, Zach, like, how did your festival go? How many films did you get to see? Do you have any cool memories or celeb spottings? I know this isn't the typical thing I care about, but I'm curious if you have any cool memories from the festival.
So I only saw about 13 this year, which was, I think, about 5 or 7-ish fewer than last year. But I still saw some heavy hitters. Some cool standout memories were anytime we had like our own ticket, not the press screenings, I would always be entering the theater at the same time as the celeb was coming out. So like I was right next to Cillian Murphy for was it Steve? I was next to Elle Fanning for Sentimental Value, and then like I saw all of Sentimental Value like walking in. That was cool. And then also seeing Vince Vaughn. Like I've never seen a star like. We'll get into Easy's but
I was right next to Vince Vaughn as well, so I think we may have been in the same vicinity during that screening for sure.
But I've never really seen it where like maybe it's common, maybe it's not, but where like a high profile actor who's seen his premiere is like shaking hands with everyone, mingling with the whole audience. Like that was a first, but that was pretty cool. He was pretty much like the man of the people. Everyone wanted to stop and talk to him. But yeah, that was pretty much it for me in terms of highlights for the festival.
Prab, how about you? Any cool memories or like any cool experiences from TIFF this time around? I know you're probably pretty seasoned with TIFF now, so there's not much that can shock you or surprise you.
Yeah, I mean, this was my fourth TIFF covering it as press. This was my second time as the editor of Range Magazine. I caught around 25 movies, and as part of my my role at Range, I got a couple of interviews in, and I think the most memorable interview that I got in with talent was, well, one of the more fun ones was the Nirvana team. So with Matt Johnston, Jimmy Carroll, that was really fun. But I think the most bucket list type of interview that I did was with Jafar Panahi. It was just an accident. I got 15 minutes with him and an interpreter, and it was some of the most like profound revelations or conversations that you've had when talking to him about everything he's been through, his time in prison, dealing with kind of the religious oppression in Iran, and how his film is kind of a response to that. It was interesting just to get his answers, and I think when we talk about the films themselves, I can go into a little bit of his insights. But I think the big thing I took from that interview was when you talk to someone who's lived a life, as you would say, in kind of the most fullest way, you can hear their experience on their voice. And I think when he was speaking, I could hear the pain and hear everything that he's gone through, just tonally from his voice to strive for his art. So it was really great. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing. It was just an accident. Unfortunately, did not get to catch that at the fest. But I also tried to prioritize things because I don't get the same access to like press screenings outside of the festival yet. I hope one day. But right now, not quite the same access. So I tried to prioritize things that wouldn't be coming out in October, especially, or wouldn't be just like guaranteed coming out on streaming in the next couple months. So Surat, it was just an accident. A lot of these films that I knew would be coming out relatively soon didn't get a chance to see. Although that story of your interview, I mean, it's just getting me more and more excited about the film. And I don't think I heard a single person complain about that movie. So yeah, super excited. I think for me, this will stand out as the first time I ever got to interview a director, which was very exciting for me. I've now talked to two. I've got another director, the director of Copper, who was part of the Wavelength series at TIFF.
Great program.
Yeah, great program this year, especially. I mean, Magayan, I didn't get to see it, but that looks incredible. Copper was so good, and I was kind of surprised actually that it was in the Wavelengths category. Didn't feel like all that avant-garde. I mean, it's a little bit slow, I guess, slow cinema adjacent, but I don't know. Maybe it fits well. I didn't get to see the rest of the Dry Leaf. Yeah, Dry Leaf. I got sent a screener for that. That movie is like absurdly good. So this like Georgian experimental film that was shot on a Sony like digital Sony camera that's like literally looks like it's 1 megapixel.
Yeah.
And blown up on a screen, it's like every single pixel on that screen is dancing. It just looks so surreal. And it's an interesting film, an interesting story. It's not just like, doesn't just rely on this lo-fi camera aesthetic. It's a very fascinating film. So Wavelength, yeah, what a series for sure. But yeah, so that's one big moment for me, was all of these chances I got this time around. And then I think meeting Seymour Hersh at a screening of Cover Up was probably the coolest thing I've maybe ever done in my life, which was pretty cool. Getting to ask him a question about interviewing, which was surreal, you know, because that's what he's done. He's a journalist for, you know, the one of, if not the most important investigative journalists of our time, uncovering the My Lai massacre, uncovering having to do with Watergate and every single war and imperialist mission that the U.S. has ever been in the last like 70 years. He was basically there keeping them and holding them accountable. So very cool guy. He asked the audience how the Canadian media is, especially in recent times, and he got a resounding boo, which I was very proud of. Very proud audience, very proud of that audience to tell him. But he told an interesting story about how when he came to Canada to cover draft dodgers, like Vietnam War draft dodgers for the first time, he said he's always had an appreciation for the openness in Canada and how they took on draft dodgers and didn't persecute them or bring them back to the States or something like that. So he was just full of stories. He basically, there was no Q&A. He just got to talk for an hour, which was,
I love it.
That's
Awesome.
Super cool.
That's
Yeah.
exactly, like, if I'm getting a ticket for that, that's all I want to see. That's all I want to hear.
Yeah. I think that's what I remember last year. Like, I think I had the best Q&A ever was when I saw The Brutalist, and Brady Corbet just went on and on for like 30 minutes.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
yeah, he was bordering a little bit on the kind of side of pretension, but you know, it was really great to see his creative process and kind of the insights he got, like to know that he shot that whole movie in 30 days. That whole 3-hour movie in 30 days. You know, him just, you know, saying he doesn't give a fuck like for 30 minutes. You know, it was amazing.
That's awesome.
That reminds me of like my favorite Q&A was also from last year, where I forget his name, but it was the director of Friendship, and like the second the movie ends, a woman walks by him, and it's just like, that movie was ass, and like straight to the director's face. And then it's just like, instead of just asking like layup questions to the director, everyone's just asking lore based questions, like was it not Rooney Mara, it's the Kate Mara. How does Kate Mara end up with Tim Robinson? And like, you know, saying like, oh, like she is way out of his league. What's the deal with all the incestual jokes? Like,
I asked her that.
Yeah,
I was able to interview Kate Mara for the magazine for Friendship's release, and I asked her that, and she was just like, "It is what it is, man."
But it was just like, it was one of the most lively discussions about a movie, about every single like minor joke, the riffing between Connor O'Malley and Tim Robinson, like what that was like. Yeah, that for me, I still think about to this day.
That's like impossible to imagine two like unstoppable objects meeting in unstoppable forces, like Connor O'Malley and Tim Robinson just being put in a room together. It's like a recipe for a firecracker of a movie. So that sounds awesome. How about from this year, Zach? Any memorable Q&A moments, anything like that?
Q&A. Let me. I dipped early from Easy's Waltz, but apparently everyone was just doing like the most basic. Also with Kate Mara, everyone's just doing like the most basic ask questions because I guess asking why Vince Vaughn decided to sing and think that was a good idea was not an easy question to ask. I guess. I trying to see what Q&As I saw. Not really that many, but I did see Steve and hearing Cillian Murphy talk because that's I think the third project he has done with that director, and they've done Small Things Like These and Peaky Blinders, so they have a very storied relationship, and it was cool to hear director and actor of talking about their collaboration and also just like working with that young cast and like trying to find all of these cracked eggs in the system that fall through and yeah, that was a cool Q&A. And also just hearing Cillian Murphy, like everyone was just there for him. Let's be real.
Speaking of weird programming, it's interesting that Steve was under the platform program and not like special features or something like that. That was really interesting.
Well, we can talk a little bit more about the programming at TIFF this year if we want, because how would you rate the overall program prep of the fest? Like the slate of films that you got to see, maybe even if you didn't get to see everything, like just looking at this list of films this year, it is TIFF 50.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's TIFF. Sorry, it's TIFF.
It's TIFF. Oh my god, if I have to hear that one more time. I think the program this year, I think there was a lot to see, but I think in terms of the real hard-hitting type of experiences, I think this TIFF, I don't think it kind of matched up to the kind of TIFF 50 or TIFF label. I thought I think in this festival it's really easy to decipher which experiences stood out and which experiences were kind of in the middle of the pack. I think that has to do a lot with TIFF kind of being in this area where it has to precede Venice come after Venice or come after Telluride. And so a lot of these films have had their premieres. And so TIFF has to really balance world premieres versus international North American premieres. And then you kind of see that in the kind of films that get awarded ultimately. I think like no film that's gone to Cannes has had, in recent memory, has won like the big prizes, right? Because they don't want these other festival highlights to kind of take over the crown. So I even thought it was really interesting this year that Hamnet, which was at Telluride, took the home prize, right? I think there's a little gaming that goes on or something. And then I was surprised to see the Paths Between Us, I think it's called, the Roads Between Us. The Road Between Us, the ultimate rescue. Yeah, and to see that, the controversy behind that movie and it being programmed and then taken off and then put back, and that pissed everybody off. Had one screening, no P&Is, and took home the best documentary award.
Well, this is emblematic of the voting system that they have in place at TIFF, right? I mean, the people who went and saw The Road Between Us, that's probably the only movie they saw and then felt inclined to vote for it for People's Choice. And then TIFF put themselves in a corner by programming, unprogramming, reprogramming the film. So they're going to have to show it. And now they put themselves in a corner. So that's what they get, frankly. That's what they get, is that the film wins Best Documentary, and they're going to have to live with that.
I don't know about you guys, but I don't know how big, like, voting is for the screenings. Like, I know when talking to people, I don't really know if people are like, oh, I can't wait to vote for this one. But it's sort of casual. Whereas I feel like with that documentary, it was very much like the allure of like the propaganda of like, oh, look, it just won Best Documentary. Make sure you vote. I think like you're going to get a lot more engaging, like a more inclined audience to vote in that case. And like just
makes sense.
And then immediately seeing the reception online being like, well, the people voted for it, so it's the most popular. It's like, well, it also only had one screening. So
And I think
you're
I
pretty
think
much
that's why.
showing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why also this year TIFF introduced the international People's Choice to kind of counteract that type of voting to make sure enough films get their flowers.
Yeah.
And it was good to see that one of my favorite movies at the festival, and we'll sure talk about it, No Other Choice, taking home that prize. So.
Yeah, they put themselves in this corner. Like you said, Zach, there are people who went to see that film are going to vote it for ideological reasons.
Yeah.
And anyone else who wanted to vote for a documentary. The problem is that the vote is split between the numerous wonderful documentaries that were at TIFF this year. I saw plenty of them. I thought they were all great. There's, I saw Cover Up, obviously, as I just talked about. I saw Put Your Soul in Your Hand and Walk, which I thought was incredible. Like, there were an incredible slate of docs. Yeah.
I mean,
the Eyes of Ghana.
The John Candy one was really well made.
Oh, yeah.
I saw Red Power Rising because I ran into the producer and director it was just an accident. So I'm like, I'll go check it out. And it was really good. Really good Canadian doc. So, yeah, I think it was actually I think for a standout for this festival, I think is going to be the documentaries. I think that will be like what I remember most.
Prab, for you, any docs you got to catch?
I was able to catch a couple. Eyes of Ghana, Put Your Hand on Your Soul and Walk. I think we ended up our team ended up including that on our kind of highlights of the festival. Another documentary that I really appreciated was Tale of Cillian or Sylvan. I think it's by the Honeyland director. And it was great. I think it was a really, really kind of enriching, simple experience, and a kind of real exercise in observation. I say this again, filmmaking is kind of the pleasure of observation. I think like this documentary really taps into that really well. Kind of a humble life of this person who just raises, livestock on a farm. So it's great.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Also, I don't think I've ever seen a film from Macedonia or North Macedonia, so that's pretty crazy. Very cool. Yeah, I totally agree with you guys. The documentary slate was outstanding this year. I would have gone to see The Road Between Us if they gave us a press screening, but they were probably a bit worried about. Yeah, I would have gone to see it. I don't see why not.
I mean, it's
I have the same response to it that I do with Russians at War from last year, which Zach, if you want to chat a little bit about your experience.
I was going to say the same thing. I probably would have seen The Road Between Us because, I mean, I like seeing the controversial stuff because you never know if it gets released. So if this is the only time I get to see it, then so be it. But and also I want to be as, I guess, like fair. Like I don't want to. If you're going to critique something, I think you should see something first. But then of course you can just shit on afterwards if you still don't like it, which we'll see soon because I had the interview with the Russians at War director, which was interesting to say the least. But yeah, it's just like it's really strange. 2 years back to back with like very polarizing documentaries, and interesting to see how like the festival treated both. Like Russians at War got a complete like one press screening, I think, and it was just completely wiped out. So it was a very surreal experience to have people like actually run into a press screening to protest it mid screening, and then get dragged away by security. Like that was pretty nuts seeing that last year.
I mean, we saw the sort of crowd that was, again, this is why The Road Between Us winning wasn't a shock to me at all. We saw, I don't know if you guys caught the clips of the Q&A that happened afterwards where people were booing at the slight mention of Palestinian human beings being referenced in the Q&A of that screening. So
I think they airdropped. I'm pretty sure they airdropped like Lisa LaFlamme as the moderator. At the
Q&A. Yeah. Well, again, I don't know. I think TIFF has to live with. I would have loved to see the film. to make up my own mind about it and not just rely on hearsay or ideologically motivated critiques of the film without actually seeing it. But given the crowd's response, don't think I'm going to be very surprised at what I watch, to be honest. Anyways, we can move on from that. I would love to get to our worst film of the fest. So let's start with you, Zach. What was the worst film you saw at TIFF this year?
Easiest answer. This is my third TIFF, and I've never seen like a bad movie, because usually there's some like, filtering of bad movies that go on. Easy's
debatable.
Debatable. That's fair. But Easy's Waltz was easily the worst film that I've seen at TIFF.
Unintended?
I'm like, well, it's Nick Pizzolatto, I think. Who did the first season of True Detective, and I think one other one. But yeah, he's really living off that one season, because this was just horrendous. I mean, they were saying that Vince Vaughn was pitching this idea of like, no, the script is amazing. And it was the most like, it had like Hallmark Christmas movie acting, but with like, if they wanted to do like a casino thing or like a Scorsese casino, like it blew my mind that like no one heard Vince Vaughn singing and thought, should we just do like a dub over this, or like is everyone else hearing this?
And weren't you saying that afterwards people like raving about his singing?
People were like, after every singing performance, I heard like audible loud
clapping.
Claps.
People were clapping, cheering every time.
It wasn't laughs. It was clap. I mean, I don't know if it was just like, yeah, it's finally done. But yeah, and then there's just like the most like middle-aged jokes of like, I'm Gen X, not I'm not a boomer. Like, and everyone,
I remember. I think that was
the fucking mind at that.
I think that was the scene where the audience reacted with like the biggest applause I've seen in a theater, and I was stunned. I'm like, this is what?
I'm in for a fucking treat. Like, this is and this is like 5 minutes into the movie.
It sounds like the audience was like waiting for someone to say that.
Yeah,
they were waiting for some Gen X boomer joke.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your assessment. I think Easy's Waltz, just to give a little context, I think, it's a story about a Vegas crooner, right? Down on his luck, Vegas crooner. Vince Vaughn plays him. He has to look after his brother. Down on his luck, he gets a big shot opportunity to play at these hotels, and he gets mixed in with kind of a maybe slightly corrupt criminal element who's also a big shot with Al Pacino, who's in the film, and it goes from there. And the film, I'm not trying to spoil a plot, but there really isn't much of a plot to spoil, I thought. I was shocked as well, as Zach, when you're watching it, you think that, is this Nick Pizzolatto's first time, directing a film? Because there's, as much as it is great to see Al Pacino chew the scenery, and he does chew it, in this clear hoo-ah sensibilities, it can't hide how lifeless and kind of underbaked this tale is. Every scene, thin characterizations abound. You have Simon Rex's characters, who has this non-existent rushed romance with Kate Mara's character that goes nowhere. Plot lines are abandoned. Plot lines are abandoned willy-nilly. Stilted pacing everywhere in a film that when you're watching it, it feels very much like a rough outline of a much richer character study, right? And so the moments that, as Zach said, when we're not subjected to Vince Vaughn's kind of discordant, kind of chalkboard crooning, we're suffocated by the amount of dead air that's on the screen. It's very much just a nothing burger of a film. It really kind of dead on arrival. It plateaus very early and kind of stays at that rhythm. And there's not much really to save it. And I think it's a film that, like you're saying, Vince Vaughn, if he really liked the script, I think he read the outline and they stuck with it, because there's nothing much to it. And it kind of comes and goes very much like it started, with a whimper.
Yeah, and I will never be able to listen to I Want to Dance with Somebody the same way after hearing Vince Vaughn do it, because I mean, you go to some bars in Toronto and hear people do karaoke of like famous hit songs. I wish I was at a karaoke bar. It's that bad.
You know what? If anything, if I was to give this movie some laurels or some flowers, I think I would say that it kind of empowers my singing. You know, when I feel like I'm a really bad singer, and I think I had a couple of drinks, my girlfriend's telling me to shut up. You know, I'll be like, hey, if Vince Vaughn can do it, I can do it.
And it's just hilarious because everyone in the movie's just like, this guy's like the best in the industry. Holy shit! How have we never heard of him? And
I think that's where Al Pacino comes in, because I'll believe anything Al Pacino says.
Oh my God.
And again, like I said, it's great how he chooses the scenery. But
Yeah.
it's not enough to hide how lifeless and kind of stilted and kind of full of hot air this film really is.
I'm like, Al Pacino's Al Pacino. Like, he can deliver any line and make it at least somewhat interesting. But yeah, anytime Al Pacino's off screen, I'm like, I'm not interested in any of these characters. I'm not interested in the storyline. I'm like, or I think after 10 minutes, I'm like, how much more do I have to endure before the next screening?
And you know what? It's easy to write off this film, but I think,
Yeah.
like I was saying, the bones of a really great character study are there. The
Yeah.
bones, the setting, it's there. But what it amounts to, I feel really much, is a prologue. This is the prologue to a much more richer story.
Yeah.
And I think the cast and crew kind of abandoned it. And at least Vince Vaughn got his laurels, a couple of claps at the premiere,
Yeah.
but I don't see this film really going anywhere.
Yeah, it has the potential. Like the structure is there. It just needed some edits, maybe. I think did Nick also write the script as well? Or was
He's a writer director on the project.
I don't know if he was just like, no, like I don't want anyone to edit this. This is great. It's like sometimes a second opinion might help, and like changing some dialogue here and there. I think
it's interesting because this film really doesn't seem like it already feels like it's cut to hell. It already feels like it's ridden itself of such substance that I feel like, maybe if he got someone else to help him with the writing, I think the editing is not the problem. I think it's just, it feels too disjointed of a film, and it never builds enough momentum to go anywhere.
Yeah. But yeah, that's like 10 minutes on Easy's Waltz alone.
That's fine. Prab, how about you?
Going from that character study, I'll go to another character study that I thought was woefully misguided, and I think its director, Edward Berger, I think it's time to say Fraud Watch. I
was on board Edward Berger Fraud Watch from fucking day one. I could not fucking stand that all quiet on the Western Front.
Every fucking 10 minutes.
Yeah, All Quiet on the Western Front was garbage. I thought Conclave was a miserable viewing experience.
You know what?
Like,
I'll push back on that.
Come on, man.
I think I'll push back on that. Is that Conclave, for as dumb as it is, I think it was a very enjoyable and I think riveting kind of watching experience when you view it through that lens. I think the movie does fall prey to some self-seriousness, but I think it is a fun experience.
Which is Berger's problem throughout everything.
And exactly what I was going to say, because this film is a miserablest kind of exercise in being self-serious. I think really it's such a discordant, kind of loud mouth type of experience. It's fun to make a pun and say, it's kind of like a nothing burger of experience and use the director, but I think it's all substance and no style. I think stories set in Macau about a lost soul, these kind of narratives have been done a lot, set in a gambling type of world, and I think it's a theme. I think the gambling kind of world is run out. We had Easy's Waltz, we had Ballad of a Small Player, and then we had Last Showgirl, another Vegas kind of gambling world kind of dud. I think this experience, Berger's approach to this film, it's always set at 11 and to a detriment, right? Like I was saying, it's kind of like the cinematic equivalent hitting on kind of 21, right? You have everything there. You have 21, but it keeps overplaying its hand, keep overextending it with kind of its pulpy neon visuals, its kind of loud orchestral stings, right? So it drenches itself and it overplays its hand at each turn, desperately attempting to kind of swoon audiences, but it can't, again, hide from the fact that it's kind of this skin deep story of a lost soul, right? It really is a cartoonish character study that kind of masquerades as this kind of opulent tragedy. And the worst part is that it wastes, I think, a really entertaining Colin Farrell turn. I think that's really upsetting about it. And I think,
yeah, that's, to me, would be the biggest travesty behind it. The waste of a setting like Macau, which I don't think I've seen a film in Macau. I think what you were saying about the recent swings and misses around gambling is that the storylines have not adopted to the modern horrors of gambling, which is online, at-home gambling addictions. It's loot boxes. It's, if any film
gotcha games,
exactly. If any filmmaker could be prepared to make a film like that, it would be Ari Aster after Eddington, somebody who's tapped into the modern times, tapped into what it's like living online, living on the internet. But there needs to be something like that for the modern experience of gambling and gambling addiction. Not just that, but all of the kind of subtle character study things that come with that world, right? Because I haven't seen Ballad of a Small Player, but I imagine it tries to do the exact same thing that every other gambling addiction story does. The downward spiral, the down on his luck, like, right?
Yeah, it's a film that it's so easily, when you look at a poster, you feel like you've nailed it down. And any good movie, when you look at it, you feel you nail it down, and when you watch it, it's nothing like it. I think this film, like I said, shows its cards. Its cards. There's nothing else to play. And it really was unfortunate because I was looking forward to, as being a kind of a Conclave fan, I'd say that, or being a Conclave kind of on the bandwagon of liking that film. I think Edward Berger is slowly running its course here. I really feel like this film was a real big missed opportunity for sure. What about yourself?
Yeah.
What was your?
Yeah, that's really too bad. I'll get into mine. My least favorite film of the festival was a French Netflix action movie called Dog 51, which I did not exactly watch in the best environment, which was like film 5 on day 1 at 9:30 p.m. start. But sorry, Prav, I'm just gonna mute you real quick. Let me see if that works. Yeah, there was just some background noise. You're good though. I'll edit things out. I think I get separate audio and visual tracks from everyone, so it's really not a big deal. Sorry. Yeah, I did not watch this film in the best conditions. I was definitely trying to push it and trying to see throughout the festival as many films as I possibly could. But this felt like the perfect type of film to end my day with, which is a Netflix action slop, future slop movie that sounds a bit like Blade Runner, sounds a bit like sounds a bit like The Platform, with the kind of way that it organizes the city in 3 separate zones separated by class, where there's an elite class of government agents and aristocrats that live in zone 1. Then there's the normie class that live in zone 2. And then there's like the drug-addled, poor immigrant crisis class that lives in zone 3. All taking place in Paris. Like, this is a recipe for at least something that could be entertaining, something that might have a little bit of class analysis, a little bit of class consciousness built into it. And instead, it is the most vapid, fucking boring, cookie cutter action sequences. The only like future gimmick that they have is that all of the cops that we follow throughout the film drive electric vehicles. Like that's what it is in the future. Actually, policing is the exact same. It's just that everyone has like an electric Chevrolet or whatever. And there's a good French cast in this film too. Guillaume Lechoux, Adele Exarchopoulos, I think is how you say her name.
She's in Blue is the Warmest Color. Right?
Yeah, Blue is the Warmest Color. She's in a ton of French films, like big star in France, and Gilles is also a big star in France. Like, the star power should have carried this alone, and instead it is just so cookie cutter and boring, and not a lick of class analysis. In fact, I'm perfectly comfortable calling this film propaganda, which is 100% what it is. It's completely propagandistic. It's just like, man, how fucking boring is this film? It's just crazy.
You know, I'll push back. Some propaganda can be great. You know, Dirty Harry.
I agree.
Dirty Harry
Absolutely.
is some of the best fascist work of art. You know,
100%.
Yeah.
But I do feel like the violence in Dirty Harry is at least self-aware enough to be like, oh yeah, this is where policing is at. Like, it's not like they're pulling it out of thin air, this violence. You know, it comes from the real world. It's just a little bit exaggerated, even though it still probably likes what the police are doing, which is pretty funny. This film does that. Yeah.
How can you miss it on the best propaganda with the other guys? Come on.
Oh, sure. Exactly. I mean, lighthearted cop comedies, of course.
Oh, man.
So you're saying, the end result is, Sean, you're saying that it does not make a good double feature with La Haine, is what you're saying.
No, not at all. In a movie that tries to portray itself as liquid in its class analysis and in its, I don't know, ability to tell a fucking interesting story about the migrant crisis in Europe or the inaction of the elite class in France to handle this crisis of theirs and racial tensions. It actually leaves out any sort of actual analysis that the film should have had if it wanted to be interesting, which it's not, and it fucking sucks. So yeah, that's my least favorite film of the festival. All right, moving on. Let me bring my blood pressure down a little bit.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want to see it now. You're making it feel like a glorious match.
Yeah, I just watched the trailer. Honestly, I'm kind of sold on it.
I'm kind of the only one who hated it this badly. Not too many people saw the film because, again, it's like 9:30 p.m. on day one when everyone saw as many of the biggest films as they could on day one. So I didn't get to hear too much discourse. The film curve seems about right, like a 3, I guess, 3.2. I hate to get hung up on these numbers, but I'd rather just like hear what people had to say about it. But to me, it's just, I don't know. I compared it to the Kendall Jenner Pepsi commercial, where it's like the good cop trying to, crawl his way out of poverty. There's like a weird game show that's in the film where like you can win your way out of poverty by winning this game show, kind of like The Long Walk, where you just get unimaginable riches at the end of winning this game show. And it's just pure unadulterated cringe. This whole movie is so bad. It's just awful. Okay, moving on. How about, like, before we get into our top threes, this is what I asked you guys to bring. Obviously, we don't have all the time in the world to talk about, like, the 30 films that I saw and all the films that Zach and Prab saw. Outside of your top three, if you'd like to shout out an underrated, under-the-radar film that you saw, something that didn't get a lot of press, something that you wish more people saw, I think that would be a good time to do it now. How about starting with you, Prab?
Yeah, I don't think I have a real underrated gem of a film this festival. I think there was a clear demarcation this year between stuff that was really great and stuff that was really just forgettable. But you know what? I'll put my stock in a film that I think a lot of people are not going to like, and I think that the film is really emotionally manipulative. I actually really enjoyed my time with Rental Family with Brendan Fraser.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, I think the film is kind of taking a page from that Werner Herzog documentary, which is about people playing roles in Japan. Like we can play a role as a father or a mother or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a friend. So the film, Brendan Fraser, down on his luck actor, biggest call to fame is a toothpaste commercial. He falls into this line of work, and then the film kind of uses this frame of performance as a way to talk about the roles we kind of play in life, and how these roles aren't stuff that we choose, but are roles that kind of we're meant to play in our relationships. I understand. Reading that on the surface, this movie feels like it's going to be such an exercise in cloying, sickly, sentimental schmaltz. And at times, the film does, I think, veer towards being a little manipulative. But I think Hikari, the director, and I think Fraser, who actually, in my opinion, gives a performance that's much better than his work in The Whale, is because he plays into his type as a really kind person. And I think the film really works. I think the film has enough restraint or grace to make its kind of sentimental moments kind of land with impact. And you know what? In a festival where I watched 25 movies, it was one of the few movies to elicit a reaction from me. Now, you can argue that, sure, it was manipulative, but I think it was handled with enough care, constructed with enough grace that those emotions really landed with impact. And you know what? You could construe this as kind of a con or a pro, but when I saw the movie right away, I'm like, this is a movie I think I'd really enjoy watching again. It cements itself as a real kind of comfort watch, kind of maybe even analogous to kind of stuff like Sofia Coppola's Lost in Translation, that kind of Westerner approach to the land of the rising sun, as you will. So I really enjoyed that. That's a movie that I think when I walked out, everyone didn't like and went on that line, but I'll defend it and say, no, it earned its emotion. So
I don't think it's any coincidence that like the film of the festival, besides maybe Hamnet, is sentimental value, and this kind of trend of overly saccharine, overly sentimental films where the main character, I mean, we all know which director hopefully I'm talking about here with past lives disease or whatever, where the character doesn't really have built-in flaws or anything interesting to say, and it's a kind of a story of coincidences or whatever. But it sounds like Rental Family kind of manages to avoid some of those pitfalls of an overly sentimental film.
yeah, and I think because of its structure as a film about a facade, about these people who are playing into being overly sentimental, playing these roles, I think that structure kind of gives it enough layers to make you think about how we kind of are manipulated into feeling these emotions, or how these emotions are kind of constructed, right? So I give the movie its laurels on that. I think I really enjoyed it as a piece of cozy, warm hug of a film.
I was also shocked that it didn't win People's Choice.
It was honest, when I finished that film, I was like, this is winning it, and I was shocked it didn't even place. So
that's crazy. I thought it was like built in a lab to win People's Choice with like Brendan Fraser or whatever. People have a weird parasocial relationship with that guy. They kind of coddle him weirdly.
You know what? Yeah, he doesn't give a revelatory performance in this film at all, but he plays into type, and I think it works for him. I think it works for the film.
Awesome. And how about you, Zach? Anything underrated that you saw?
I was also struggling with the whole underrated factor. I think there's a couple like Silent Friend I thought was good.
Yeah, I loved
in terms of like a slow burn. I'm like I honestly pretty cool. They did the
one of two movies at TIFF, by the way, which feature a German plot line set over 3 time periods following 3 different women over time, which is confused me when someone recommended I go watch Sound of Falling, and I ended up watching Silent Friend. I'm like, this is the movie they described to me, right? And then no, it turns out those are 2 completely.
It's just strange that it happened twice.
Yeah, exactly.
Another one, I mean, Mile Ends Kicks, because I love some good Canadian CanCon representation. But I think
I loved Mile End Kicks as well.
The one that I like is as a good underrated one that was quite informative. Was I'm gonna pull up the indigenous name of it. Ni Nada Madas, probably butchered that. Red Power Rising. It's basically about a group of a First Nations reserve says, hey, there's this park just outside of Kenora, Ontario, which is in North Ontario by the Manitoba border. And they're like, we kind of got screwed over by a treaty, and we think this belongs to us. And so we are going to occupy this park. We've got guns. Everyone is free to. They basically said, all the white folk, you got until 5 a.m. to leave. And they said, no one stayed for breakfast. Everyone was out of there. The second they see Indigenous person with guns, everyone freaks out. But basically it details, I believe it was a 30-day occupation, and all they had was 8 minutes of archival footage of what happened. And the reason why I was like, well, why is there only 8 minutes when there's all this press and media surrounding it at the time? And it was because a lot of it, according to the directors, a lot of it was just burned and gotten rid of. News stations and papers were told, no, just pretend it didn't really happen. We can't have, this inspiring other occupations of Indigenous land. And so, yeah, I thought it was really well made. They had a lot of the original people who were in the occupation there to speak at the screening, but also in the documentary. And yeah, and also it's not just about what happened at the park. It was also detailing sort of what was going on in Canada, I believe in the 70s is when this took place. And just, the era of just radicalization for people. You got a lot of left-wing groups coming out. So they're talking about, I believe it's called AIM, which is the American Indian Movement, which was based with groups from the States coming to Canada to help out and assist and speak at Parliament, and how they were brutalized by police. But they also talk about how, not really a spoiler, but one of the people who was at this occupation was actually an FBI informant who, was meant to cause trouble and was actually teaching everyone, here's how you build a Molotov cocktail. Here's how you make a bomb, in order to really get them to, give the police officers a reason to start shooting and be like, these guys are dangerous. Really, they were quite peaceful about it. They gave everyone time to leave. They had their demands met and laid out. So it was really eye-opening because, we talk about, what's going on in Israel or other countries, but the way that Kenora, Ontario treats the white population versus Indigenous population is really the same thing. They're talking about how you've got groups of teenage kids who, as their high school pastime or even elementary school, is to just find an Indigenous person on the street and, chase them, stalk them, beat the shit out of them. And yeah, it's not even just in Kenora. It is all over Canada. There's plenty of small industry towns like this where this sort of thing happens. And so, yeah, I thought it was really well made. The editing was pretty cool. And the son of the leader who led this movement was reading, his father's letters, and basically telling as many stories as he could about what his dad was going through. And yeah, it was very informative, and I thought it was quite enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm looking at 40 logs. So this is quite the hidden gem. That's awesome.
I don't think many people saw it, but I definitely encourage people to.
Wow, I'm gonna check it out because it really reminds me of kind of, like you said, it's a timeless story, right? Even if you think of the Oka crisis, right, and this kind of, right, and then even you look, it might even relate even to Alanis Obumsawan's work, how she talked about Kanasatake and all of that. So really looking forward to that for sure.
They do actually highlight that at the end of the documentary is, well, here are some other movements that were inspired by this occupation. And one of the things they brought up was the Oka crisis, because it made all these First Nations be like, actually, if we get guns, people start taking our demands seriously all of a sudden. And this is one of the movements that really sparked that and inspired communities to be like, hey, we can't keep taking the shit anymore. So I thought it was really cool documentary, and it's only 90 minutes. It's a great tight 90.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I think for my underrated pick, I also want to shout out Silent Friend, which is less underrated now that it got great buzz at TIFF, and I thought it was. I've never seen a movie that like romanticizes science in such a beautiful way that film does, with parallels with human relationships across its 3 different time periods, critiques about misogyny in science and the role of women in STEM, and bringing in a new perspective in that sort of way. Each of these 3 decades, I mean, these triptychs across time, it's not a unique. I mean, there was literally another German movie that did the exact same thing at the fest, but it's not like a totally unique concept. But just the way that it goes about doing this, I think the film really beautifully highlights how alienating the competition in science can be across 3 different time periods. We have like the original, the 1908, the first woman admitted into this German university that the film follows. The film takes place at the same university. The Silent Friend in the title is a massive ginkgo tree that towers over the field in this campus, and they all all 3 of these characters find a respite in this tree, and they kind of have a different relationship with this tree. This is the Silent Friend, or If These Walls Could Talk, I think would be another name for this film. I think the middle section. Also, by the way, all 3 of these sections are filmed with different cameras and different lenses to give it a unique feel. The 1908 one is shot on black and white film. 1978 is shot on, or 1972 is shot on like 16 millimeter camera. It has such a nice warmth to it.
Yeah.
And then the modern era is shot on digital cameras, taking place right in the midst of COVID. I know we're going to get a bunch of these COVID movies coming out in the next couple of years, but I think it was done.
This one works this time. This one, it makes sense in a larger context because of the whole
100%.
Alienation effect. And so
absolutely,
once I'm like, okay, at first when I heard COVID, I'm like, oh fuck, here we go. But now it's like, when you compare it with the other timelines, it's like, well, actually, it makes sense now. It actually lines up pretty nicely. Because they also talk about like the alienation of the tree, and like, are they able to? Are trees able to communicate with people? And
right, that they feel like, lonely.
Yeah,
that
like, do
they
feel
reproduce
lonely?
with themselves. There's only one ginkgo tree on this campus, which needs another tree to make new saplings. They kind of all bring it in a beautifully ribboned package.
I didn't think they could make botany and psychology somehow mix, but it works. It works. And they had
neuroscience aspects of it were really, really fascinating. I don't know. I don't think the science is that legit, to be honest.
Yeah. There's some times I was like, I don't know if that's legit. I believe they had, was it a botanist that came?
Yes.
Yeah, so right. They had a botanist.
For the Q&A with the director.
Researcher, yeah. And so she was able to give that perspective.
Ildiko and Yeti, who is the quietest, most introverted director I think I've ever seen. She went up to the stage during the Q&A and she was like, wow, this room is very intimidating. It's like one of the big Scotiabank theaters with the tiered slope, and she's, I don't know, maybe 5'1".
I don't even know if she's even 5 feet.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. So
she's
tiny.
so small. Really great Q&A with the botanist. Absolutely, yeah. That was awesome. Just heartwarming. I don't know. I don't care about the science being legit. It seems like it's legit. That's something she probably cared about, portraying the science well.
I feel like for a lot of other science fiction movies, like this actually tried to do some sort of realism, which is kind of cool. And it was sort of based in reality to a certain extent. So at least that I was like, okay, it's not ruining my immersion, but I was like, okay, I could see this actually happening at some point in the future, or even now. So that was cool.
Okay, but for my real underrated pick, I want to give a quick shout out. I know I'm biased because I did get to interview this director, but Singaporean film called Amoeba I thought was fantastic. I didn't get to see it in the midst of the festival. I saw it on a screener afterwards. But I really hope this film does well, especially in Singapore. There's some concerns that I talked about with the director, some concerns about potential censorship, or because there's, some homoerotic tension in this old girls' school that the film takes place in that might be censored or otherwise unacceptable in Singapore. Some critique about the Singaporean government, which is a dictatorship that hangs in probably the strangest category of dictatorship, which is an incredibly popular one. An incredibly popular dictatorship.
I think it's the closest we'll get to like a benevolent dictatorship, maybe.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
one with a limit on the freedom of press, a limit on the on protests and critiques of the government, but
Also
one
drug
that-
use. They're very like
yeah.
death penalty
And-
for like the smallest things. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and no chewing gum, but prostitution is legal. So
Oh, wow, okay. Did not know that. I actually
no.
started the interview by saying I know the things that everyone knows about Singapore, which is the chewing gum and death penalty. And she's like, you actually knew more about Singapore than like most people at TIFF, which surprised me.
yeah,
but-
that's what I like about it. Yeah, like I think your pick here like makes me want to look at more Singaporean cinema, because Singapore, you're saying,
Right.
is a really interesting kind of
Fascinating place.
bubble where it really feels like the Roman Empire kind of transported onto our state, because they really do the breads and circuses. Like they do allow alcohol, they do allow prostitution, they give sex workers like daily checkups, they sponsor all of that. They're like, we give them their breads and circuses so they don't eat the
Yeah.
government, right? So it really is a
Not
very
to
interesting
mention
dynamic.
that there's not to mention sorry Prab, not to mention that there's a 95% home ownership rate. Strong but government controlled unions and good labor laws. You're right. Like there's now there's a number, there's 3 ethnic groups that make up the country, primarily Indians, Han Chinese, and Malay people that get a rotating position in the presidency of the government, not the prime ministership, or maybe I flip-flop those, but one of those positions has to be rotated amongst the ethnic minorities every 5 years or so. Like there's real
And it kind of works, I
representation.
guess. Yeah.
It all kind of works, but doesn't at the same time.
Yeah.
There's some underlying desire for freedom, which is exactly what Amoeba is talking about. It's talking about the little displays of rebellion and just how quickly they get shut down by people in power, namely the school administration, which is very much conservative, Han Chinese style of teaching with hours and hours of practicum and schooling and very strict dress codes and no real room for gender expression, sexual expression, or personal expression of any kind, really. This is a place that needs you to conform, and that's kind of what the whole movie is about. And it also joins this echelon of movies that feature the characters in the film recording themselves with a camcorder. Okay, Amoeba, Blue Heron, 100 Sunset, a lot of movies at TIFF with all filmmakers kind of in the same age range and growing up around the same time, considering how they recorded their past and how different it is from our cell phones and social media. It's all on a camcorder. Not the whole film, but like a lot of these moments that we see the girls capture at this old girls' school in Singapore happen on camcorders. And I think this is an emerging trend, not to put it in a box, but rather to say there's a number of films at TIFF that kind of did that trope, all very well. And looking back at memories in a way that, looks very different to how I think we grew up. I mean, maybe when we were really young, we had camcorders, but not how we captured our memories.
That is pretty much the plot of After Sun, was looking back at these memories. She literally does that. It's just she goes to her camcorder and it looks back at her childhood that she recorded and was just like, oh my gosh, I see it through a different light. And I think that it is interesting that like we're now in that generation of the people that grew up in that era of recording everything with their camcorder and digitally like that. it's now making its way into their films as they're getting older and becoming directors. So I think that is pretty cool.
I think even Sophie Rambari said that when she saw After Sun, she thought it was great, but she did go shit because she was in the middle of writing Blue Heron. So I don't think that's going to be a mark against her. Or that film, which we'll get to, I think, in a second. Okay, to move on, unless Prab, you had something to add here. Yeah, to move on, I want to get to our favorite films of the festival. Our top 3 favorite films that we saw, starting with number 3. Prab, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, so it's interesting that it's a film that wasn't having like a big premiere at TIFF. It already had a lifeline or a life at a few other festivals before it went to TIFF. But when I saw it, it really affected me like few other films, and really kind of made me look at our role in the world kind of cosmically in a very interesting way. This is Clint Bentley's Train Dreams. I really, really fell in love with this experience, and I think it really, really feels like a spiritual sequel to you could say Andrew Dominic's Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. And I think that has to do with the fact that you have Will Patton doing a lot of narration. And so just a little bit of background, the film story is very deceptively simple, right? It's about a logger, relatively mysterious, doesn't really have a background. The type of figure who would be lost to the annals of history is the subject of a film. And it takes through his life, living in the cabins, working in these seasons in the Pacific Northwest, logging, and going through, he bears witness to kind of the social, technological changes that shape the American frontier during the early 20th century. He witnesses how, the exploitation of nature by industry, the mistreatment of immigrant workers, and the lives that are kind of lost to the hard work, right? But through this narration, through kind of the storybook aesthetic or feel, I think the movie really becomes this lyrical, life-affirming experience. It really builds and crescendos to become this really cosmic tapestry, that illuminates this life of this person who, like I said, would be lost to history, finds beauty and truth in every step he takes. And as the film kind of transcends and sees his life moving from kind of the more American Western type of life in the early 20th century to kind of mid-century America, you really see kind of this mythic old world of kind of flora and fauna gave way to concrete jungles. And I really found myself pondering kind of our innate connection to it all, our role in this kind of intricate grand design, right? The big mystery of it all. And I thought some of the performances were phenomenal in terms of kind of the lyrical, in addition to the kind of the lyrical direction and the cinematography that you have. I thought, I forget the name, Stephen A. Macy or William Macy or William H. Macy.
William H. Macy, yeah.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And I think he gives one of the best supporting turns I've seen at the festival. And I think it'd be a shock. I think I really have him as a dark horse to kind of get nominated for something, because he really is phenomenal in this movie. And I love this kind of line that he has. He goes, beautiful, ain't it? All this kind of cosmic mystery in the world. And then really the film begins with real clutching at your senses, and it really, really, really doesn't let go. And I really found it really profound, moving experience that I thought most of the films at this TIFF really didn't emulate. And any of you seen it, or think I'm overhyping it, or whatnot?
I was happy with the film. I did not have quite the existential, life-affirming experience that you did, but I also was quite stupidly misinterpreted what period of time the film was set in. It took me, I really wish I read more about the film going into it, which I also try not to do. I think if I give it another shot, I would enjoy it more. But I want to say one of my all-time favorite tropes in film is when they plant a person, a man from another era into a modern era that they can't quite connect with. And that scene, we're going into deep spoiler territory here, but that scene of Robert Grenier taking the train into the city, and seeing modernization and seeing tall buildings for the first time in his life, and seeing a city with more than like 5 people per 100 square kilometers for the first time in his life, gave me the same kind of sensation that there are different multitudes of worlds out there. I got the same feeling I got watching Dersu Uzala, which is Akira Kurosawa's Russian language film, also deeply embedded in nature, about the frontier, the taiga in this case, the Russian taiga, and surviving in this wilderness that is really harsh and uninhabitable to human life, but still there are guides, there are hunters, there are people who survive in this world. And not only that, but especially in Train Dreams, enable us to live in cities, which is a fact of life. There are lives out there that have been sacrificed to the whims of nature and the deep jungle or the deep woods, the wilderness, to enable modernization and technology that we have in our cities today. And not to veer too off course, but I really think Dersu Uzala is a similar film to Train Dreams.
Yeah.
And thinking back on it, I really love the lush cinematography. I love the performances. I need to give it another shot. It made me cry also.
Yeah, and it did me as well. And I like you're saying, I like the approach that you're taking, that the film really becomes, starts out as a storybook, but then really manifests as kind of the stream of consciousness, our shared consciousness through this world, right? Like a tide of time. And it washed over me. And I think that's the power of the film. And interestingly enough, I think it's the best film Netflix this year so far, from what I've seen. I think it was the best Netflix movie at the festival, for sure.
The Netflix got a bit of a chuckle at the screening I went to, which I think it does everywhere, but it was pretty funny because this does not feel like a Netflix flick at all. It was great. All right, Zach, how about you?
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say the way you described him, like going into the city, reminds me of how they planned out the storyline for Red Dead Redemption 2. Is that you start out like wilderness, like out in the boonies, and then eventually by the end of the game you're in like Saint Denis, and you're like, holy shit, they got electricity here, like this huge metropolis. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Now I want to check this out as well.
I think you'll like it, Zach. I'm positive on the film.
And I think also we know how much I love westerns, so this movie had to get to me.
Again, made in a lab for you, for sure.
So for my top 3, I kind of have them all tied. Nothing was a 5 out of 5 for me, quote unquote. But we'll start with one of them. I'll start with I guess I'll go with It Was Just an Accident. I saw that day one, and I heard a lot of buzz from Ken, and it lived up to it. The hype, I think, with the blend of sort of like the dark comedy humor, being able to laugh about torture and political violence, but then also trying to blend that with trying to find forgiveness and how do we move on past that, and so essentially it takes place in Iran, and a man is walking down the street and he hears, the night before, he hears this guy with a stub leg, and it's a very particular sound. And so he kidnaps him in the street and calls up some of his friends who are also tortured and says, we were all blindfolded, but I need you guys. Do you think this is the guy who tortured us? And they're like, it smells like him. He kind of does this thing. It kind of reminds me of that. So it's a really, you get a whole cast of characters, each with different personalities. Almost road trip movie-esque a little bit, the way they go around the city. And then at the end, it just becomes quite, without spoiling, it becomes quite haunting the way they finish it. So it's like, you get a lot of laughs. Like, people are really receiving the movie well in that regard. But then leaving the theater, it was just like an audible gasp of just shell shock, I guess. So I thought the way they blended that was quite masterful in that way. So I could see this when it comes down to like best international film at the Oscars. I could see this being an easy nom. I know, Prab, you also saw it. What did you think of?
Yeah,
the
I not
selection?
only, like I said, not only did I see it, I had the pleasure of interviewing Jafar Panahi at my time at TIFF, and it was very interesting to see him talk, because when he talks about the experience, and you're right, the movie is very funny. It really plays out kind of like this humanist, grounded comedy of errors, like a humanist screwball comedy. And I asked him, why did you go for this comedic lens? And he told me, I didn't even think it was funny. He's like, I didn't think it was funny. And he's like, I was shocked to see these people laugh. But he's like, sometimes all you can do is laugh at the pain. All you can do is laugh at these things. And when I interviewed him and when I talked to him, the characters that you meet in the film, this bride, this bumbling kind of couple, this wedding photographer, he's like, all these people, they're not actually existing, but they are culminations of people that he said that he knew and he talked to when he was in prison, or people he knew that just got out of prison before him or were still in prison when he left. And they all informed his experience. And I really, what I love about this film is that stories that are centered around revenge kind of always filter into two thematic camps, right? It's revenge is evil or forgiveness is virtuous, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this film reworks kind of those surface level inclinations to really, I think, craft one of the few prescient layered reckonings, or a very different type of reckoning to the Iranian regime's kind of human spiritual toll, where I felt that last year, Seed of the Sacred Fig was a very on the nose type of experience. I think this film sifts through its character interactions, becomes a type of social film that cultivates a real powerful community of shared suffering that kind of blurs the lines between a personal kind of trauma and a very systemic type of trauma. And it confronts these questions really head on and ethically gray, and it puts audiences in the front seat to see, when you've experienced this type of pain, is there an ethical response to it?
Yeah.
And it really is a powerful film in that regard. I do love the film. It didn't crack my top 3, and I think the film, I think a lot of people label it as kind of a masterpiece. I think it's almost there. I think it is for me, but I also feel the film is a very obvious kind of winner of the Palme d'Or. French people love anything to do with religious oppression. The whole thing of secular society, laic society, Charlie Hebdo still lives in their mind. So I think it won on those laurels a lot, but I think it still survives as a really powerful experience in its own right. For sure.
Yeah, that is interesting that you said that he didn't initially think it was funny until the audience, thought it was funny. It reminds me of an interview I saw with Steve Park about Fargo, where he has that one scene where he breaks down, he's crying, and I think it was for Letterboxd. He was saying like, "Man, I thought I'm killing it today. Like this is like the most dramatic acting I've ever done." But then when you watch the film, everyone's like, actually, like, I know this is really traumatic, but this is actually just like a really funny sequence in itself. And he did not think at all, like, going into it, like, oh, like this is going to be like a huge ha-ha moment. Like, he's like, no, I'm going to give the performance of a lifetime. And it's funny how it just happens like that for movies where, an audience can easily flip how something's interpreted.
And I think it's emblematic of how real that performance is. All these people are so grounded and real, and that sometimes laughing is the true emotion that you get out of it. That he is so real, all you can do is laugh at how much he reflects life back at you. So I really love the film, and I think that was a good call with Fargo. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It is one of those experiences that reflects life back at you, for sure.
All right, Sean.
I can't wait to watch It Was Just an Accident. I'm like super excited for that. And anyways, we'll get to the other one that I missed. But yeah, It Was Just an Accident. Awesome choice, Zach. My number 3 is by a director who is my number 1 pick. His film Godland in 2022 was my favorite film of that TIFF. I was blown away by the, portrayal of the Icelandic ecosystem and fauna and just those alienating massive landscapes in Iceland. I also love, although I'm not a very religious person myself, I love stories of religious tension and spiritual awakenings and the religious, interpretation clashing between different cultures. And Godland was very much, I think, inspired by, almost directly by, Andrei Rublev, which is my favorite film of all time. I think, you guys have both heard me talk about this, my love for that film. So Godland was an easy pick. My number 3 film of this year's TIFF is also by Hlynur Pálmason, his film The Love That Remains, which is a more grounded in reality, marriage story-esque. You're dropped in the middle of this relationship that is seemingly disintegrating between husband and wife, husband Anna or husband Magnus and wife Anna, that are kind of surviving also in the frontier of, in the middle of Iceland. They are self-sustaining. Magnus, the husband, is a fisherman who works in the fishing industry. The wife Anna is an artist, a visual artist who does these massive impression paintings with massive sheets of iron or aluminum that she lets rust out in the sun, that creates these like beautiful tapestries with kind of interpretive shapes that are very abstract. And turns out in the Q&A afterwards, the actor is Svevir Gudnason, who's worked with Pálmason before. Unfortunately, Pálmason was not there for the Q&A, but the actor talked about how those are Pálmason's artworks. He's also a visual artist. He's a painter. He is in all sorts of galleries in Iceland and across Europe. But there's also commentary about the art industry at large, kind of in the same vein as Brady Corbet maybe talking about art and making a film in The Brutalist. There's a little bit of that where a foreign, non-Icelandic gallery owner comes to visit the artist Anna, and he spends the entire time kind of laughing at how in the middle of nowhere they are, and just doesn't treat her well, doesn't listen to her. He is the most pretentious asshole that you could imagine an art critic or art gallery owner could be. And it's a very snarky commentary about that world, which ends in a absolutely hilarious moment that I don't want to spoil at all. But the grand narrative of the film, the propulsion between these two, the husband and wife, and their brilliantly acted children who give like such a realistic and phenomenal child performance in this film. It really does feel like we've dropped into a family's day-to-day life, how the husband and wife are trying to shield their children from the confusion of their marriage that feels like it's over in some scenes and feels like, well, there's love that remains, as the title suggests. I thought that was brilliant. Also, a dog performance to rival the one from Anatomy of a Fall. So there's a little bit of everything in this film. The scenes of the fishing industry, again, are just so dynamic, and they feel dangerous and lively. Iceland, again, it's hard not to make this place look alienating, but also beautiful. And I think Pálmason does a really good job at that. And then it just like, you think you know what you're watching, and then it just throws a massive curveball at you. And it veers into just total absurdity. It's meant to be funny. It's meant to be sardonic and sarcastic. But I don't want to spoil exactly what happens, but there's a moment that broke the entire theater's brain in this film that I'm sure everyone remembers. You know, that's the thing that people will remember. If they didn't love the film, that's what they'll take out from it. So,
oh
really
my God,
throws you for a curveball.
No, you're really making me regret missing this movie. Like you're giving me FOMO. You're giving me movie FOMO.
Adding
or
it
film
to my
FOMO.
watch list right now.
Because
Yeah,
I And you know what the craziest part is? I think that it's emblematic. You know, so 200 feature films over 11 days. I love Godland, and I didn't even know he had a movie at TIFF. So
I know. And it wasn't working out with my schedule at all. I rushed lined it, and I got in like, which is again, I don't want to like talk too much about the intricacies of the festival, but fuck Ticketmaster. Every single screening except like the most popular press screenings out there had empty seats and were sold out online, which is just ridiculous. And I think also some people, despite rushing a film, despite there being empty seats, did not get in. Pretty disappointing. But I luckily got into the screening for this one. It was a public screening. I got to, you know, I got to see the actor who was phenomenal for the husband, and yeah, just brilliance. Really good stuff.
it's on my list for sure. Feels like an epic in miniature for sure.
Yeah. It's grounded, but it's huge. Iceland feels barren, but it's a story about a family. Like, it's got that dichotomy. It's very dynamic. It's a great film. Loved it. Prab, number 2.
Okay. I think I alluded it to before, and it was, I think, by far one of the most popular films at the festival. So, accuse me of being a populist, accuse me of being, you know, going into or not having original taste. I don't care. But I think Park Chan-wook's done it again. I think there's few filmmakers who can really have such command of the craft and really let it just go out on the screen with reckless abandon. Loved No Other Choice. I think it's a film.
Zach, if you want to avoid spoilers, you don't feel like you need to. I'll give you two thumbs up when we're done. If you want to skip this.
Yeah,
I think I missed it from Mylan Kicks. Oh my god.
Oh no.
Oh man. Yeah, and hey,
your choice. Okay.
It is
Go
your
ahead,
choice.
Prab, sorry.
But unlike us, we had no other choice, and we had to see it.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I think in my coverage, I called it LinkedIn's worst nightmare. I think I think Park Chan-wook is such a great master of biting satire, and I think in this film, he really proves himself to be kind of a really attuned to what it means to live in today's kind of dog eat dog market cap economy, right? He really creates a painterly vision of late stage capitalism, right?
Which I think is accelerated to an unimaginable level in South Korea. It's just, it's like gives me anxiety even to think about.
And also as being Canadians, you know, I think we can relate to the idea of our whole countries being run by single corporations, right? We're run by a couple grocery stores and a couple telecommunication companies. I think Samsung runs South Korea. So
LG and Samsung, it's basically an oligarchy there.
Yeah, right. And so, and I love that in this film, the film, you know, it has so much chaos. It has so much bumbling energy, chaotic energy. You know, especially in a film about someone who loses their longtime career and concocts a kind of devilish plan to get a new job. You know, to dispatch his competition for the job. And kind of the Ouroboros, I like to call it. You know, like the Ouroboros constantly eating itself. It's this Ouroboros nature of workplace politics, right? And then so I think Park Chan-wook, through his craft, through his editing, the superimpositions, the kind of crystalline slicing symmetries that he kind of captures, really finds method to the madness, finds chaos or finds order in the chaos, right? And I think you know, it really unfolds with kind of barbed, acerbic precision, and it slinks its way through these amazing hysterical set of kind of moral quandaries and errors, and it really glistens off the screen as this kind of grand tragic comedy, right? That not both affixes us to kind of the urgency of its message, where, you know, in a world where humanity is becoming kind of this irrelevant or kind of this unneeded commodity, it affixes it to the urgency of that message, but also it understands that there's not much to do but laugh kind of at this world that's subsuming itself, you know? So I think it's, I think it really was, I think, the best cinematic experience of the year. And I think he's done it again, you know, another banger.
I, as someone who has struggled recently with a job search and is dying to find full-time work, I had a pit in my stomach the entire time watching that film. It was so anxiety inducing, to a fault, I think, for me, but that's like my own problem. with the film, not like any issue with the film itself. I was just like, it's painful to watch and to suffer with this character. I thought it was great. I mean, the craft is just phenomenal, right? The transitions, the creative camera work, the performances are great. Like, maybe a tad long. I don't know, maybe a tad long, but not quite, Zach. Maybe a tad long, but yeah, I thought it was awesome, and the audience reacted so well to it in our press screening.
Yeah, I love it. When I was watching the film, I made a note, that like as bottom lines get thinner, corporate overlords greedier, the idea of an honest living is already kind of a relic of the past, right? It's a process already streamlined by an automated factory. So I think the movie really taps into kind of the absurdity of it, that in a free market where decency, dedication are low value currencies, there's little left to do, but like its main character, invest in darker qualities. And I love it. I love this film for that. And I think it's a film that, for me, a hallmark of a film when I see it is I want to watch it again right away. It's a film that really exhilarated me, and it really made me, it's what TIFF's about, So I really love that about it.
Sorry to hold you, Zach.
No worries.
I knew that this was important for you not to get spoiled, so I didn't want to make sure that you
all I heard was LG, Samsung, transitions, a bit long. Anyways,
yeah, you're number 2.
Yeah, what the hell? I guess you guys can also talk about this, but Midnight Madness, I got Obsession, and
I know Crab's a big fan.
I thought, okay, like the initial premise when I read about it, I'm like, okay, like a guy wished for a girl to fall in love with him, and it goes wrong. That cannot be. That was so sugar-coated of an assessment. It gets flipped on its head. I don't usually get scared in horror movies, but this one has such an unnerving like dread that's associated with it, where it's like once you pick up on like, oh fuck, this is gonna happen, isn't it? And it holds it for just like the perfect amount of time. Like it's not just a quick like flash jump scare. It will hold on to something and make you like live with what's about to happen. And I forget her name, the lead actress, but
in the Navarrete.
Yes, she does some really mind-boggling things with her body in terms of, I guess, body horror in that way.
She's a star. She's a star in the making.
Yeah, that was a standout, and it's like it was all like practically done. I don't think she had like a body double for it. Like it was just unnerving. I'm getting like Vietnam flashbacks of hearing certain lines of, the typical like, oh, do you love me still? Or like, oh, why don't you want to go up? You're going to go with your friends and leave me. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can't. This is not, I need 5 minutes to breathe.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think Curry Barker, this is his feature debut. I think he really understands, I think, through his compositions, how to extract the most amount of tension, but also comedic kind of catharsis out of negative space, out of hanging on a shot and letting the stillness speak for itself, right? And I think what I really love about this film is that, in the decade, since elevated horror became kind of this buzzword, right? The genre has been inundated with these self-serious experiences that kind of do away with kind of zany, devilish kind of thrills, right? I think this movie obliterates that line because it's a deceptively simple concept, right? A curse, right? It's a monkey paw, right? If you think about it, right? Where he makes this wish and it comes true in a very sinister way. Has this person that he once loved so much falls in love with them desperately. It makes it really intensely nerve-wracking, but also very darkly hilarious, right? And
he had a
you know,
lot more depth to that concept. After a bit, I'm like, okay, like this is cool, but like, there's no way like this can like. I thought like, oh, it might like drag on, like it's gonna do the same bit. No, it somehow progressively gets more and more, like just pushes the envelope of like where he's taking this idea, and it doesn't get to a point where like, okay, now it's just getting a little nonsensical. It's like, we're going this direction now. Okay, Alec, you really go along for the ride. And
this is the setup for all of Curry Barker's comedic work, which is kind of in the same way that Tim Robinson's stuff just spirals more and more into absurdity, but it always starts in a place that's tangible and kind of grounded and level. If you watch, which I looked into his stuff afterwards, but I realized I've seen his comedic TikToks and reels all the time. I mean, he knows how to make a viral hit. Like, his stuff was all over my page without even realizing that this was the guy who did it.
And then
if you watch his comedic stuff,
Yeah.
This is the premise that he starts at, is that you get a guy and he asks you a simple question like, I don't know, did you see the game last night? And he's like, yeah, wasn't it crazy when that guy died and exploded? And you're like, what game did you watch? What the fuck? What happened? Or whatever. Like, whatever setup it is, it always starts with just like something so simple, and you have a character just like teeter on insanity. That's what all of this stuff is built on, and I think Obsession does that so well. And you're right, the pacing is perfect, the amount that it holds on certain absurdities is perfect. So yeah,
and then I think
tone.
What a lot of horror movies struggle to do is sticking the landing. How do you end it in a very pleasing, but also like, just sometimes it's like, this is a great horror movie, but they fucked up the ending. I thought this was like perfectly wrapped at the end, and yeah, I'm like, I love the blend of
those
horror
end credits, dude.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to spoil them, but oh my god,
I love the blend of horror and comedy because I feel like there's so much overlap in terms of like how you build this scene, and I think it just perfectly blends the two genres together.
Yeah, those two genres are interlinked.
Yeah.
Like, it's a marriage. It makes sense.
Yeah. All right. That's it for me for Obsession.
I think one last thing I'll add is just one sentence. I think, simply put, it's one of the most invigorating horror experiences I've had in recent memory.
Yeah.
Agreed, for sure. I'm making a quick switch on my number two. I think enough has been said about Blue Heron, and I would rather take this time. I loved Blue Heron. I thought it was great. But I think I have something more exciting to say about a Brazilian film called The Blue Trail, which I will name as my number two of the festival. I absolutely loved this film. I love Brazilian cinema, which we'll get to in a second, of course, but I especially love Latin American relationship with magical realism and the psychedelic, the out-of-body experiences, the Amazon. Like, there's a whole lot of spiritual history of spiritual awakening, and it might have something to do with the country's relationship with indigenous people and indigenous population of Brazil. I'm not as well read on that world as, to commentate on it, but I think there's something there. And the Blue Trail is a pretty funny concept. Basically, it follows like a futuristic Brazil where, in the name of economic recovery, they've decided to send elderly people to a elderly colony. And nobody really knows what goes on there, but it's a state mandated trip at 70 years old or 75 years old or whatever. You have to submit yourself and register for this elderly colony. And it's to kind of reduce the burden that elderly people have on society, on caretaking in an aging population, in a growing economy. This happens, the birth rates are lower and there's less people to take care of the elderly. But in the face of pure unadulterated capitalism, where the only thing that you care about rather than the humanity of the elderly people is economic development, economic growth, this is a amazing solution. In the same way, I think in the wake of how we reacted to COVID and COVID lockdowns and how we treated elderly people across the world, in this case, I think this is a reaction, a very clear reaction to the COVID crisis. Not a COVID film, though, specifically, but I think rather we see in the midst, again, of capitalism, unadulterated, just pure growth model, how it reacts to people who get in the way of that growth, whether that's the disabled, whether that's elderly people, so on and so forth. Now, at TIFF 2022, there was a Japanese film that did something very similar. It's actually called Plan 75, and it's the same age that this film is sending people to this penal colony. This Japanese film, Plan 75, it's actually even more unsettling. It's a euthanasia program for those who turn 75. But the main driving force is actually quite comedic in this film. In The Blue Trail, you have this elderly woman named Teresa who, she's 77. She still handles herself. She doesn't wear, there's a running joke about wearing incontinence diapers. She doesn't wear a diaper. She lives on her own. She cooks, she cleans all by herself. At the beginning of the movie, the government comes to her house to put laurels on their front porch to celebrate her coming of age of 75 years old or whatever. But the whole film follows her dream of flying on a plane. She's never been on a plane before. And so this is the kind of what is propelling the action in the story. And all of the bureaucracy that is blocking her taking a simple flight, because the country, in the name of economic development, has made short-term flights illegal. There's commercial flights, but to sign up for them, she needs permission from her family, and her family just wants her to follow the law. They won't give her permission to take this flight. They just want her to get out of their hair already and go to this elderly colony. And we see in every scene, this Teresa is in every scene just moving this story along as she meets different characters who either help or hinder, take advantage of, or are sympathetic to her desire to just take a simple flight, an airplane flight. And the Blue Trail, or Ultimo Azul, is the river that runs through Brazil. This is kind of like a character in and of itself. The geography of Brazil, all of these little villages that, the Brazil is populated, these little villages around just throughout human history, just because of, I don't know, it makes sense. You're around a river, food supply, water, et cetera, fresh water. You just see different kind of characters and moments in Brazilian time and history just kind of coalesce along this river. You see the importance of this river to Brazilian culture. And it's also just magical. It's strange and bizarre. Every character that she meets is hilarious and very full of life. I don't know. I thought it was very touching. I totally recommend this film. Loved it. I don't know if either of you have seen it. Did you guys see it? No?
No, I wasn't able to catch it. But again, this is like the second movie, right? You've really sold me on this thing. And I really
it's awesome.
Myself. And I love the kind of what you're saying, at least, and where the geography of a country is as pertinent to its story as its human history.
Absolutely.
I think that's really profound.
Absolutely. Very profound. In the same way that The Love That Remains is ecological in nature, I think this film is very obviously, it's so lush and green. Brazil is one of those places that again, kind of like Iceland, but Iceland is very barren. It feels like inhospitable, and yet people still make it. Rather, Brazil is like one of those places that is just lush and full of life and full of animals and fauna and bugs, and just like it's just living and breathing, and it's hard not to make it look like the most beautiful place on earth.
But the systems are barren, is the point.
Yeah.
Right?
Whereas, I mean, Brazil has had its history with military juntas and government and dictatorships and fascism, and just really, I mean, you can just look at the last administration before Lula with Bolsonaro, who is now set to serve what, like 40-year prison sentence or something like that. So Brazil, you know, as lovely and hospitable the nature is to human life, that kind of breeds a level of greed and detachment that is found in Brazilian art, you know, and I'm sure we'll get to in a second. Yeah, okay, definitely get to in a second. Yeah, definitely recommend this film. It goes down every new character that carries the film along with Teresa. It's an unpredictable turn, so just really lovely, awesome film. Okay,
I think that's a really good transition.
Yes, to our number one, right?
To my favorite film of the festival, which is a film that I didn't see actually at TIFF. I saw it pre-TIFF. They had some press screenings, but it's a TIFF movie. And that's Kleber Mendoza Filho's The Secret Agent, which directly deals with the Brazil's military dictatorship in the 70s.
This is the first one I think all three of us have seen, right? Oh, no, Obsession we all saw. But yeah, another one that all three of us have seen.
Yeah, and I think this movie grabbed me right away. And I think on the description, when you read it, and especially in comparison to films like I'm Still Here last year with Walter Salles, when you read on the surface, this movie reads really as typical awards bait, right? It's a political drama set during an oppressive period of history, reckons with the kind of the open wounds of horror's past with a somber, tragic touch, right? It feels like, you know, I'm still here, but we're doing it again. But I mean, if you're familiar with Kleber Mendoza Filho, his kind of genre plays, his kind of ingrained love of cinema, you know it's not going to be that type of movie, right? And so from its opening moments, The Secret Agent really feels like a patient, lived-in type of film. It really feels, it becomes apparent, right, that the film is less interested in being an overarching kind of document of its era than it is in being a messy, vibrant tapestry of a people, right, across its beefy 158-minute runtime, right? It clutches at the fabric of Brazilian history, culture, folklore, right? And it eschews the kind of conventions of a political thriller. Its title, The Secret Agent, is a misnomer in the best way, where it kind of manifests, I feel, as a living, breathing kind of cinematic novel, right? It brims with warmth, texture, detail in every frame. Every frame you can smell, feel, and taste in this film. And its setting taking place in the 70s, shot on 70s Panavision film equipment. It really feels like an analog to kind of Altman's cinema of the 70s, where you have this kind of mosaic of these interconnected stories and lives, and this overlapping kind of dialogue that's happening. So it really is a film that it bustles with texture. And to be honest, it's a cinematic novel that I really feel that we're watching. And I really also love how it's a reclamation of romanticized and personal history as well, where it finds that art is not so much as a method to erase history or kind of hide history, but art and fiction is a way to distill history and get to the truth of it, and help us light the path forward to a kind of reconciliation with history. And I think we'll get into it, but like some of the artistic detours that the film has with playing with folklore and kind of its homages to genre horror cinema. You know, it has fun detours of people watching The Omen and watching Jaws, and then you have this kind of horror-esque sequence that happens in the film that again is used is a beautiful, fun kind of play on folklore as a tool of oppressive systems to kind of keep people further marginalized. So I love this film, and it really is, again, one of the few exhilarating experiences a really full-bodied experience of a film for sure.
Many directors have a muse in an actress or an actor, and Kleber Filo, his muse is the city of Recife. And like Recife, especially when you really dive into all of his films, just becomes its own character, not just the city itself and like, again, how beautiful and lush it looks, but how it's sealed in time and doesn't feel like it's aged much like other Brazilian cities have, but also its love of film and film culture, like the film 2023 Pictures of Ghosts, which is a documentary film about why he's obsessed with Recife, about this hometown of his, and how it has, despite being like Brazil's 9th or 10th most populous city, has a massive cinemaphile culture, and has, at least back in the day, not so much anymore, which is one of the great travesties of Recife, and why he so desperately cares and wants to kind of like hold on to a moment in the past with this city. But back in the 70s, or when he was growing up at least, more movie theaters per capita than anywhere else in Brazil. You know, like this is really a cinema loving place. And you can tell because a movie theater, a famous movie theater of Recife, is another character in this film, Secret Agent. Like you said with the genre play, like you said with the homages to Carpenter and all these other like horror classics, or Brian De Palma, or whatever you might want to call it. There's like a deep cinematic lineage that exists in this film, as complicated as this film is and as much as it wants to say, which took me a little too long to like clock into, but I should have been more prepared knowing Philo and his style. I should have kind of anticipated that, but I think for me, it will require a rewatch. And I think I already have a feeling I will enjoy it more on the rewatch now that I know what to look for. My first impressions were that it was very messy. It was so much all at once. It's just like attacking it in all different angles. The dictatorship, the love of cinema, the it's just like keeps going. Yeah.
The only way to clutch at the fabric of a people, like I say, is to be messy. Because I think it's a film stylistically, structurally, I think embodies that perfectly. And it's an holistic kind of viewing experience.
Yeah, it is. It is for sure. I mean, there were moments that I still remember vividly, and I fell in love with some parts of this film, which is why I really think that a rewatch will serve me.
I'm still thinking about this one sequence in the film that lasts, I think, 10 seconds. It's when he's sitting outside of the movie theater and looks out the window, and the camera just pans in just a little bit, and you see the life in the city. I don't think I've seen, there's few films where you feel you can smell and taste, and you really are transported to a time. And I love that the film not only romanticizes this period, but finds the courage to walks the fine line between romanticization and a full-on kind of reckoning with this period as well, which I love.
Zachary, you saw the film too. You have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I agree. I think a rewatch will probably be necessary for me, because I don't think it clicked right away, because it was kind of like, I don't know, it kind of felt a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it was sort of just in terms of like the genres I was playing with, and so I was trying to figure out where's this going? I'm like, I didn't really know where it was going, but yeah, there were parts that I really liked. Like, for example, there's a bit of a shootout scene, and the use of like prosthetics just like came out of nowhere. I was like, oh my gosh, was not expecting like fucking 1970s horror gore type prosthetics that coming out of nowhere. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, there's elements I like. There's other elements where I'm just like, all right, I probably just need a rewatch. I think I wasn't as enthusiastic, but like I could see why you'd be enthusiastic. Like there's definitely it definitely has a lot going for it. I just felt it was a little bit dense, and I think it was also just trying to get a little bit more context, I guess, for someone who's not from Brazil. I feel like for example, like with I'm Still Here, like it laid out sort of like the initial groundwork of like getting you into what it was like to be in the 70s junta era. Whereas this one was sort of eases a little bit too much.
Yeah, but I think that's where the film works, is that it's a response to that type of thing. If you look at the title, you think, oh my god, it's going to be that awards baity international movie, and it's full inversion of that, which I love. And I think in comparison to I'm Still, I think it's a much truer experience and a much more honest and authentic experience as a result. And I'm more interested in films, I think, as a filmgoer that kind of tap into this kind of ambient tyranny, that are not solely historical films where are just cause and effect, where you kind of settle into the air or the ether of an era, and you really feel an oppression or tyranny that's ambient around the kind of outside of the frame in a way. And I think it does that like few films do, and I think that's why I really resonate with this film. And also, Wagner Moura, I think, gives the greatest lead performance I've seen this whole year. I think it was
incredible.
If someone asked me the best lead performance, it's Wagner Moura. I think how much he conjures through his inflections, through his innate kind of this melancholy he builds through his face, it is amazing.
I don't know if you guys have seen Barry, but there's a scene where it kind of reminded me of like the one Bill Hader joke where he's like, "That guy's trying to kill me. That guy here is here to kill me." It kind of had that scene where I was like, wait, that's actually kind of funny. Just don't want to spoil, but when that scene happened, I was like, oh my gosh, this reminds me just like Barry.
Barry is amazing. I love Barry.
And so there's definitely a lot of good things going. I think just a second viewing, I'd be like, it'll click better for me. Which there's a lot of films like that where, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, this is like the best, one of the best from the era. And I'm like, I don't know. But then the second viewing, I'm like, you know what? I see what it's trying to do. So I think that's all I needed. Also, didn't help that for like the last 40 minutes, I drank too much of my iced tea and had to pee. And I never want to leave a theater, but the entire time I'm just like, fuck, I can't. I'm like, stop thinking about it.
And it's so long. The movie is so long.
I miscalculated. I thought it was 2 hours and 20. And so I'm like, okay, only 10 more minutes. But then it was actually 2 hours 40. I'm like, fuck. So I think I was too preoccupied for like the last third of the movie. But
I also love the film's jumping through time. The importance of archiving is like so palpable in this film. Archivists, film archivists, historical archivists, these are like important questions about like how are we going to look back in this point in history as the US devolves into fascism slowly. How much of their scrubbing of their websites and of their social media platforms or whatever are we going to lose?
Exactly.
Right.
And I think the film's answer to that wonderfully is that fiction is our only way to the truth. Fiction is not a way to augment truth, but to distill it. And that's what I love about it. And I think it's one of my favorite anti-climaxes ever. I love it.
Yeah. It needs a rewatch for me, but I did really enjoy it too. All right, Zach.
All right. Oh yeah. I'm a big Worst Person in the World fan, as I've been saying. I put everyone on that one. I'm like, guys, you gotta watch it. You're in your mid-20s. You don't know what you're doing. Just watch that, and everything will make sense. Or still continue not to make sense, but at least you'll be a little bit more comforted. I really liked Sentimental Value. You know, there's a lot of buzz going into the festival about it. Did I think it was as good as Worst Person in the World? No. Were there some jokes that Sean pointed out, like meant for a festival audience to laugh at? Yes. For example, a joke where he gives his grandson a copy of The Piano Teacher and says like, "This will help you understand women." I was like, okay, that's pretty good. People got a good laugh out of that. I definitely big performances from Stellan and Elle Fanning. I mean, she plays the whole American actress who's in a completely different country and doesn't really belong role really well. Lees Anderson, yeah, Lees Anderson Lee, I think that's his Anderson, yeah, fucking Norwegian names. He's back in it, frequent collaborator. And yeah, he puts on a bit more of a subtle performance, like he's not in it as much, but still great to see him. Looks completely different, almost didn't recognize him at first. In the end, yeah, Renat Rensva and forget the actress who plays her sister. The amount of chemistry I think Joachim Trier has, like with his characters and actors, it just feels so like I feel so convinced. I'm like, that is Renat's actual sister, because they have like the dialogue is so natural, it's flowing. There's rhythm to it, but also just the way they bounce off of each other. I'm like, this feels like a real family dynamic, and yeah, I you guys have seen it as well. What did you guys think of Sentimental Value?
I agree. I think it is not as good as Worst Person in the World. I also think that the film loses its kind of emotional core or emotional focus as the film progresses. I do like initially the structure of the film is that it's each section when it cuts to black is like a chapter in a book being closed, right? And it goes through time and space, where one of these chapters is a moment in time, or it can last stretches of time, or even phases of life, in one chapter, and each cut to black is that close a chapter. But I think that structure, as it moves on, creates a kind of little bit of a disjointed feel in the film, and I think it loses its emotional core. And I think on a personal level, I think if we want to bring our own biases into it or backgrounds, I don't know how to say this nicely, but when I was watching the film, I just felt these are white people problems. So, it's like, oh my God, your dad wants to talk to you? Oh my God,
your dad's giving you a role in this new movie?
Not just wants to talk to you, but like have an emotional relationship that is estranged in some way. Yeah.
And I do like that the film doesn't descend into schmaltz or unearned emotion. I think there's a section near the end of the film that if it went a different way, if it went towards more of a stream of reconnection, I think it would have undid everything the film went for. But I think it kept its line. I think it's a modest, good effort, but I don't think it's a revelatory experience that I found.
I agree, and I think it does fall into schmaltz, especially with the culmination and the ending of Stellan Skarsgård and Elle Fanning's relationship. I thought that was painfully cringe to watch. So saccharine, like you're a good person. Okay. I don't know. I wasn't feeling anything with that at all. I thought that the sister character wasn't developed well enough. I just was missing something that I love from Joachim Trier's films, which is real emotional depth, and bad people. There's no one really that bad. Like, Stellan Skarsgård's character really didn't do anything that bad to anyone to deserve the emotional trauma dumping that happens in this film.
Yeah, they really brush past oh, he was bad because he wasn't there, but then it's not really there's not enough time to really be oh, that was bad. It was sort of it's like me as a viewer, I'm I don't know if I'm actually fully convinced that he's bad, but or like they'll just briefly show like drinking problems, but it's not something that really, you know, next scene he's completely fine, and it's not something that really persists.
But there are like moments of brilliance in this film. And,
Yeah.
you know, I'm thinking of this, like when I was getting edged by the sister character getting some sort of real character development, and then it didn't turn into anything but this initial conversation that they all have as a family about reconnecting, and the sister acting like a mediator in this situation, and Renee's character, you know, taking the opportunity to fight back and really show herself as an individual. I thought that was brilliant. That was so good. Exactly what Joachim Trier gets me with his other films. And like I'll sing Thelma's praises. I think Thelma is a legitimate masterpiece. I love Worst Person in the World. Oslo, like 31st, if you want to talk about a character study, again, yeah, Anders Danielsen Lee is so good in everything that he touches. Yeah, there's something.
It definitely does dive into, like, I will agree, like Scandinavian white people problems.
For sure. But
especially when you're in a housing crisis in Toronto, it's just like the way the house plays a character, and you know it being passed down. I'm just like,
yeah,
man, wouldn't it be fucking nice?
And I think it also didn't. I think it also didn't help in my respect that I watched it immediately after The Secret Agent, where I'm like, I'm dealing with real problems, and then, but not to mark against the film, but I think it is a film that, where the universality of Worst Person in the World was there, I think this film is really, really attuned to people who are really into the art scene. And I think the movie does champion art as a tool for reconciliation. But I think it loses that little bit of universality or emotional impact for being more insular of an experience.
I will say, because I watched this one right after it was just an accident, so the stakes weren't exactly the highest, or like the problems weren't the most pressing. But yeah, that's why I sort of had all three movies. I was like, there wasn't really a clear cut number one for me, I think. But yeah, I like that we were all kind of like, once we get to our number one film, we're all being very critical. Like, we were critical of a Secret Agent. I wish I saw Blue Heron, but yeah, Sean, let's hear about that one.
Oh, yeah, Blue Heron is probably tied for second or third. But my ultimate number one is a film by Simon Mesa Soto. It's called A Poet. This is my number one film of the festival. I was like in a completely empty press and industry screening because Surat was happening at the exact same time. Again, I made the decision to just like prioritize something that I don't know if I'll get to see. I don't know. This film did really well at TIFF, at Cannes rather. It won some prize in certain regard or something like that. I remember reading that it did well at Cannes, but I don't know the state of this film's distribution or anything like that. So I wanted to see it completely blind. I had, again, no idea what I was getting myself into. I just saw the cover art and was really intrigued by this like sad, depressing looking main character slunched over with like pulled up jeans, raggedy jeans, and a button up shirt. And as it turns out, this movie is a sympathetic look at a pathetic character that really this script just bites down and doesn't let go. It's so fucking mean to its main character, which I totally love, but it still finds the humanity in that meanness. Basically, the film follows this failed poet writer named Oscar, who the film, it's a Colombian film, it's a Colombian production. The film takes place in Colombia. And Oscar is this once successful failed poet. Like, he put out a poetry book that was sold in like a couple of poetry bookstores in Colombia back in the 90s, and now he's still kind of riding that high today. And poetry is out of fashion. There's like one poetry, what's it called? Like a foundation or something that deals with young writers and helps aspiring poets maybe get a chance. But all of the poetry being produced by this foundation is interested in suffering and poverty and how Colombia has been ruled by drug cartels and the plight of racial minorities, because these are the poems that get funding from overseas contributors. We see a Danish woman who comes down with her European funding money to fund this poetry society. And Oscar is convinced that he is just as brilliant a poet as the people who run this poetry foundation. And as it turns out, he is just a miserable loser who can't write a poem to save his life. His physical comedy, just like his mouth agape and pathetic looks into the camera, are like so fucking funny. They feel like moments stripped right from The Office, in the same style as The Office, but even more just sarcastic and just really brutal. You just feel like this guy is totally unrelatable because every decision he makes just makes his life worse and worse. And you feel like screaming at the screen, like, just get a hold of yourself and get a job, you fucking loser. But that's kind of the point. It's just like, that's the driving factor of the movie, is that this guy's a total loser. And it works so well. And it creates sympathy for somebody who's otherwise just miserable and is an energy vampire in a way that drags everyone down with him, you know? Such a good, like, character study, such a good look. This guy has a heart, though. Again, like, this movie, the central pain of this movie is that this guy is unrelatable and catastrophic and like a whirlwind of pain everywhere he goes. But there's a heart in the center of this, is that he's really trying to do the right thing. He's trying to repair his relationship with his family, with his estranged daughter. He's trying to, I mean, at some point you got to realize you get a job. I mean, I don't think they reference a specific age, but he's like 45 years old and lives with his 80-year-old mother and borrows money from her. And it's just really, really sad. But at some point you realize that you got to take control of your life, take a hold of your actions and responsibility and that sort of thing. And that's another big theme of the film, is like personal responsibility. How much is it your fault that you've chosen the life of a poet and that's not really a profitable way to live a life? And how much is it the fact that you got to kind of find a day job sometimes and you got to survive? Again, elements of capitalism, elements of surviving when you're an artist. It's all kind of like a whirlwind of pain amongst this guy, Oscar, who is just the hilarious lead actor. And yeah, great film.
Yeah, you're 3 for 3 for me. I feel like this is right up my alley of like a miserable, self-loathing artist who feels like he has something to give to the world, but lacks the conviction to actually do it, but finds a kind of joy in the art process itself because it gives his life meaning. And even though he's not going to be some revered poet or revered artist, the idea of just doing the art for art's sake is maybe there's a beauty in it. And that kind of reminds me of kind of Inside Llewyn Davis as a result, you know?
Yes.
Sake, right?
Someone else I talked to at the screening said that too.
So yeah, you're 3 for 3, man. I need to follow you every time for next TIFF. Follow you. Just look at her because you hit 3 for 3. I think these movies always honestly would have been into my top picks of the fest for sure.
I watched some stinkers, so I think I would have led you astray when I brought you to Dog 51, which would have been
you should have joined me to Easy's Wall with me and Zachary.
Oh yeah, exactly. No, there's also an element of like there's clearly some importance in Colombian history or Colombian culture for these poets, because there's some references to these poets in their currency, like in their money. There's a number of famous poets. There's former politicians who are poets. So there's like a prestige in Colombia associated with this. I don't think you could have picked any other type of art or medium than poetry, and this film wouldn't have really worked for this culture. You know, it's very specifically poetry for a specific reason, that it's easy to be vapid. It's easy to put out slosh. And that's something that this poetry foundation that they talk about where eventually the character Oscar takes on a day job as a Spanish teacher at a school, like a literary teacher at a school, where he has no other option if not just to go homeless because his mom's going to kick him out of the house. So he takes on his job, and he wants to live vicariously through someone. So he mentors this young girl who he actually does genuinely find her poetry to be really good in class, and also her illustrations, her drawings. But she's not really interested in being a poet, right? And you can see this like driving force of living vicariously through this young girl who he brings her to this foundation, and you can see that she really doesn't give a fuck about being a poet. But I don't know, just a great dynamic. A lot of great commentary about the arts and art, like kind of these foundations that are funded overseas, maybe exploiting lower class artists who want to make their own art but are forced and pigeonholed in a certain way to make art of a specific kind, you know. Yeah, so great film. Thought it was awesome.
I think you might
right.
have the best list of us three.
I haven't seen any of them. So.
I did all three.
Definitely. I think all of our lists are genuinely very emblematic of our own tastes, which I love. You know, another props to TIFF for having such a diverse selection of films. You know, yeah.
I'll say it. Happy TIFF.
Happy TIFF.
Stop trying to make TIFF happen. It's
sir,
not
you dropped
gonna
this.
happen.
Sir, you dropped this.
Oh man. And here's
wait, what's the Varda?
I'm just happy the Bulgary's gone. My God.
No, that was awesome. I'm so sad it's gone.
Man.
So much better than Varda. It's like you get 4 claps in. All right. Zachary and Prab, thank you so much for joining me on this TIFF recap episode. I know we went way over time, so yeah, just big thanks.
Pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And for everyone watching, there's so many great films coming out soon. As you can tell, like we're very excited about these films, so definitely keep an eye out. So yeah. Thanks for watching as always, and yeah.
Here's to another TIFF.
Here's to another TIFF, exactly.
Yeah.